in for the entirety of the game, and just to see how they, if the away from them, are they still showing effort? You know what I mean? Stuff like that. So they're not just basing it off of
Right.
huddle, obviously. And I mean, I know you know that, but I
Right.
was just throwing that out there because the listeners that aren't,
Right.
they might not realize that. But anyway, I think, I mean, if you're comparing to me anyway, um, like an out of state kid versus an in state kid, and they're one might just be a tick above the other one and say that's an out of state kid. I would lean towards the in state kid just because of the care factor. Hey, I'm playing for an in state school. One of the in state schools, and I'm not saying that. I don't know. I just think the care factor would be a little bit greater for an in-state kid than it would be for an out-of-state kid. I'm not saying their competitiveness or anything like that, but it's just that little extra, that you get from players that might not be as physically. I mean, Zach Vigil, he even said he's like, Nick's way more athletic than I am, and Zach was a beast. I mean, that guy was amazing in college. And, he didn't get drafted. He signs a free agent, contract, and he's still with the team. His
Yeah,
brother leaves.
Nick was bigger and faster though.
Yeah.
So
And he leaves as a junior,
right.
gets drafted in the third round, and so, I mean, you're going to find these guys, but I just think and I'm not saying the coaches don't spend time in state because, I mean, we're seeing it the last 2 weeks. They've been all over the state. They've
Mm.
been in southern Utah. They've been in Salt Lake. They've been everywhere. So it's not like they're neglecting the state, but it's just, I wish I was a fly on the wall just to see what the recruiting, board looked like, and to get in and just to pick their brain to see how they, what their thoughts are, because I mean, we think we know what is needed, and I mean, if we're just, these guys that are sitting on our couch and talking about it right now, and we think, and we can see it that it's obvious, well, we'd hope the coaches would see that it's obvious, you know what I mean? So, um, but I don't know. I think you got to take a little bit more with the in-state guys. You got to give them, I mean, if they're on the equal playing field, and maybe, maybe it's a grade issue, maybe it's a character issue that they have problems with or whatever. I don't know.
Right.
But I think you have to take it a little bit more, I don't know, the upper hand with an in-state kid, if they're kind of on the even playing field with an out-of-state kid, I mean, that's how I see it anyway. But
Yeah, and by all means, I'm not gonna name names, but there are some of the most worthless, laziest high school recruits that actually do have offers. Um, that I don't want Utah State to offer. By all means, just because you're from the state of Utah doesn't mean Utah. I'm begging Utah State to offer them, or that I think Utah State should offer, or that I'm excited that Utah State offers. I mean, I've been doing this for a few years now, and there's been times that I'm not excited about an offer that Utah State gives out, in state, out of state, and sometimes I'm completely wrong. I by no means did I see Jalen Davis coming in and starting at cornerback as a true freshman. I didn't see that. I thought he was a good recruit. I mean, I wasn't mad about the offer or the commit by any means, but I thought he was a guy that was going to take a little bit of time to contribute because of his size and some of the limitations that I thought maybe he would have. But it's recruiting is not easy, but um, in my opinion, that's there's guys in state and there's positions in state that you can find guys. I think we really like both of us really like Sturzer. I think after he serves a mission, he's going to be a complete beast. He's one of those guys that 100% if you can Put him in the cloning machine. I would take two of him every year for the two defensive ends. I mean, that'd be great. We can build a team with a D line of Sturzers, but so I don't know, and I'm speaking more general. Obviously on the last podcast we talked a little bit of specific guys and different things, um, but in general, a guy that dominates in the state of Utah, I think is a lot of times is good enough to play at Utah State. So, if you're talking about one of the top three or four offensive linemen, one of the top even 15 defensive linemen or linebackers, that's a pretty good player, and you've got to choose. I mean, it's not, yeah, let's offer all 15 necessarily, even though like on defensive line, for example, you probably could offer 15 guys some years, um, but maybe not all the same class, right? So you're gonna offer 15 guys. Some are gonna be seniors, some are gonna be juniors, some are gonna be sophomores. But anyway, um, that's just something that it's you know I think just needs to improve. Like you said, Seth, you're being the voice of reason, so that's good. Is make sure I want to make sure people understand as well that I'm not saying it's completely off the tracks, and if you're from the state of Utah, you're screwed. Utah State's never going to recruit you. I'm just saying it needs to take that next step, and I really think it could be even better. I think in the past, there have been some assistants that weren't um, as committed to really scouring the state of Utah and really offering those guys, even if they weren't quite as good as the out-of-state guy. I think, obviously, over the last 4 years, assistants have changed and everything. So I can understand that, and some were better than others recruiting the state of Utah. So anyway, that's kind of the my thoughts, and I think I guess the last thing on my little in-state rant would be, and we've got 7 minutes to go on this podcast. So definitely check back to Scout, check back to ustateaggies.com. Make sure you keep up with all the recruiting information there, and we'll have updates on coaching changes or program changes that actually happen. Anything else you want to say as far as changes that you think will happen? Maybe we should spend the next 7 minutes talking about that. I think we've mentioned, I think some guys will be brought in as far as the recruiting philosophy, or the recruiting plan. That's going to be a big part of the recruiting plan for this year. There will be an offensive coordinator, I think we decided. And what else?
I'm just gonna throw this. This is my philosophy.
Okay.
It's actually not mine. I heard this from somebody, so I'm not going to take credit for it, and I'm not going to mention names. But there is no such thing as a bad recruit. They're just bad seniors. Does that make sense?
Right.
So I'm stoked anytime anybody commits. You know what I mean? To any schools that I cheer for. Utah State's not the only school I cheer for. I'm excited, for my other teams too. But obviously there was 10 people on staff that hopefully came to an agreement. Hopefully it wasn't just like, yeah, this is my guy, and nobody else had any input. So hopefully, the consensus on the offensive side for an offensive guy is, yeah, this is the guy we want or whatever. So obviously they see the potential in him, but bottom line is it's up to the player to come in and work and to be coachable and to be a good senior and not a bad senior when they get recruited. Just because you got by scout.com, or whatever, 3 or 4 stars by your name doesn't mean you're going to pan out that way. I mean, there's guys that Utah State obviously has had that didn't have any stars behind their name, and I mean even walk-ons that didn't even have any offers, and they turned into absolute. They went to the league. You know, and I mean, so it's up to that individual player on how much they want to get out of it. So um, that's my philosophy. There's no such thing as a bad recruit. So and then it's up to them if they're going to be a good or a bad senior. So,
Yeah.
but
And
change
that's the
it.
thing. The more I follow recruiting, the more I watch huddle tape, and almost every time I see a guy tweeting out, "Oh, here's my huddle tape," I watch it. That's just the recruiting degenerate that I am. And so the more I watch, the more I see, the more I talk to guys, the more I go to camps and get to know these guys, the more I believe there are a ton of guys that are talented. There are a ton of guys that are good enough for Utah State to offer. There are a ton of name that position guys, offensive line, defensive line, obviously is what we've been worrying about, this year, for example. But name that position, quarterback. There are guys out there, that are good enough. There are lots of them, and sometimes it's little things. Sometimes the in-state guy is going to turn out better. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes it's going to be a guy from California or Washington or Arizona, like Kyler Fackrell, that just has something different about him that's going to come in and be a complete beast. But I know there are talented guys in Utah that I know better than the guys in other places. But it's just a matter of finding those guys, and that's obviously the number one goal. Players make plays, players win games, right? That's 100% fact. The players are the ones out there that improving. They're responsible for themselves during the off season. They're responsible to work hard, do the extra work, and make things happen and improve. So it's not the coach's responsibility, not 100% the coach's responsibility to so-called develop these players. The quarterback coach isn't working with the backup quarterback or the freshman quarterback every day, every throw that the quarterback makes, so-called developing that quarterback. Probably that quarterback coach did a good job recruiting that player, recruiting that NFL guy or NFL draft pick. So it's it's just a matter of it's just it, you just gotta make it happen, and that's what you can control. You can control who you recruit, who you offer, and who um, you know. You can't control anything else. That's recruiting. Recruiting's crazy. You can't make a guy commit. You can't make a guy work hard. You can't make anything happen. So you've got a minute left to say your last words there, Seth.
I've said my piece. I think
All
we can
right.
close it out.
All right. Sounds good. Well, definitely, some work to do to hashtag fix it. I think, the whole thing with the play calling is going to be a big thing to watch. There have been a few guys' names thrown out there with, that have come from staffs that have been fired. I know the offensive staff, from teams like Oregon and Mississippi and Texas, they're same thing. They're good coaches. Those coaches aren't bad just because they got fired. So we'll see what happens if it's something like that that ends up happening, or if it's going to be kind of a younger guy up and coming chance on somebody. So we'll see what happens. We will obviously keep you updated on this podcast as much as we can. Record from time to time. If you have any questions, let us know. Go to ustateaggies.com. Ask us questions on the premium board or the regular message board. We answer those all the time, and we'll get an answer for you. So thanks for listening, and listen up next time. Thanks for listening.